Welcome everyone to another webinar series. This webinar is about bystander intervention and it is geared more towards grades 7 and 8. Let's start by briefly introducing the facilitators that we have here. My name is Alicia Fisher. I'm the Prevention Education Supervisor with the Kawartha Sexual Assault Center. And from the Kawartha Sexual Assault Center, we also have Victoria.
Hello, I'm a volunteer at Kawartha Sexual Assault Center, and I do a lot of the online crisis line, phone, text, and web chat.
Awesome. Good morning, everyone. I'm Melissa from Nichkwendada Anishinaabe Services Circle, and I am the Aboriginal Healthy Babies, Healthy Children worker. Pleased to be here with you guys today. Miigwech.
Amazing. Here we go. Okie doke. Okay, so bystander intervention. Now, a lot of the discussions that we have today may be connected to bullying, but just know that a lot of these can be applied to the real world as well. So what are we going to be discussing today? So today we're going to discuss who these two service providers are that are here. We're going to look at some what is a bystander, effective bystander intervention, and then some tips and techniques to being an upstander. So how do we kind of stop things from escalating? How do we stop harmful acts from occurring? And so I just want to take a look at the screen that we have here. So we have us that are grade 7, grade 8 in this space. So we have what appears to be a lot of instances of bullying and harm that's occurring. And so this may look very different now than it even did last year, right? So last year, or I guess let's say 2 years ago, because last year we were in and out of school a lot as well. But so 2 years ago, we were in more physical spaces with one another, and that bullying may have looked very different than it does now. So now it may have moved to more of a virtual world as opposed to in kind of the physical world, even though some of us are back in class right now. But there seems to be a really high incidence of levels of bullying that's occurring. And this is totally understandable. There's a lot of big changes that are going on in the lives of grade 7 and grade 8s, right? You have moved into this leadership position, whether you like it or not, of the school. A lot of people in the school are looking up to you as guidance, as leaders. Maybe a lot of people are asking you questions about, what are classes like being in, I forget what they call it, like the senior grades, right? And then there can be a lot of uncertainty then moving into high school, and what's that going to look like and how that feels can be a lot. And sometimes we take these very loud feelings that are in us, and sometimes it feels good to just let them out and hurt other people. And so, as bystanders, we need to make sure that we're creating a space of respect, a space of leadership to kind of speak back to these types of instances. So Melissa, did you have anything to add to that, being grade 7, grade 8, and how busy that was?
Oh, yes. I think they call it intermediate, I believe is the terminology. For sure, it's definitely one of those times where it's, we're feeling a bit more overwhelmed and a bit more worried because we're going to be going, starting to get prepared to go into high school. So, sometimes with those different emotions and feelings, we can get, sometimes we can act out against our friends and our peers, and just being especially aware of these skills that we're able to take forward going into high school, are really good to learn at this point in time, especially right now during, the global pandemic. Having these skills, we aren't able to see each other as much, and we all just need to be really friendly to each other and support one another because it's a very difficult time.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, yeah. Okay, so who is the Kawartha Sexual Assault Center? Some of you may recognize us, which is really cool. We miss you all. But at KSAC, what we do is that we support anyone who is impacted by sexual or gender-based violence. So not only do we have the individual and group counseling, which could be expressive arts to journaling to even looking at trauma in the brain, but we not only support survivors, but also their supporters, right? So whether that's your romantic partner, your friends, your teachers, caregivers, parents, we offer that support. And then maybe Victoria, since you work more closely with this, can you speak to the advocacy, accompaniment, and peer support that we offer?
Yeah, for sure. So advocacy accompaniment, that's like us supporting you when you're going through either the court process or going to the hospital or even just going to the pharmacy to like pick up anything. Just being there for you and making sure that you're okay. And peer support is like pretty similar. It's just with you get support from people around your own age to help you and be there for you.
Amazing, thank you. Yeah, and then we do our public education that goes all across our community in schools and outside of schools. We also offer 3 24/7 crisis lines. This is through text, phone, and web chat. So you don't necessarily need to be in crisis to access those supports, but they are available there even if you have questions. And the areas that we serve are Peterborough, the Kawartha Lakes, Haliburton, and Northumberland. And you can head on over to a website if you're wanting more different supports in different areas and communities. It's OCRCC, Ontario Coalition of Rape Crisis Centers, and there you can get connected to all the centers across Ontario.
Awesome. So I'm from Niche Quindida Anishinaabe Quebec Services Circle. So we're a non-for-profit agency located on the other side of the floor of Kawartha Sexual Assault Center here in Peterborough. So we are a non-for-profit agency that works with Indigenous women and their families who've been abused, at risk of being abused or currently being abused. So we provide services to our clients through traditional healing practices. So we provide support with, having access to ceremony, community referrals, counseling support, whatever really you need, we're here for you to support you with that. So some of the programs that we have at Niche Quindida, so my program's Healthy Babies, Healthy Children. We have housing support, so advocacy and support in securing stable housing, crisis in like short-term and long-term counseling. We have a youth and transition worker who is phenomenal. And we also provide cultural competency training to, various organizations and communities who want to further educate themselves on the Indigenous culture.
Amazing, great. So, if you're an educator in a classroom right now, and if you happen to be watching the replay, feel free to pause after this slide and maybe have this discussion with your class. What comes to your mind when you hear the words bystander intervention? What does that mean for you? What does that mean for you inside of a classroom and outside of a classroom? Let's get some thoughts going around it. And so, there's some scenarios below that require or maybe don't require some form of bystander intervention. These are much larger conversations that we can definitely come into your school and provide these, come in virtually to your school and provide these discussions. But let's go into what is bystander intervention. Victoria, do you want to read the first one there?
Yeah, for sure. So it's taking initiative, speaking out, and doing something when you see harm. So being like an upstander.
Yeah, and there's an importance to really doing something, even if that may not seem as significant as jumping in and doing something yourself. Doing something, and we're going to go over what those somethings can be a little bit later, but getting involved in some capacity can make a really big difference to a situation. Melissa, do you want to read the second part here?
For sure. So bystander intervention is when somebody is kind of looking on the outside at a situation where they recognize that somebody is at potential way of being harmed, or that there's an act of harm going on. So perhaps bullying, on social media, in person, and interacts with what's taking place in order to prevent or lessen the harm. So when someone looking on the outside gets that feeling in their stomach where they don't really feel right with it, and understanding and acknowledging that there is harm being done and what they can do to support that person and the overall situation to lessen the harm for that person. So we're going to be talking today about bystander intervention in the context of school life, but bystander intervention can be used in every part of your life, at home, out in public, online. It can work with your friends, your family, and it can work on the street too when you see something that's going on, and being able to acknowledge and be educated to know how to do something when, we get that uneasy feeling in our stomach where there is the potential of harm.
Thank you so much. So let's rewind here a little bit. So we've learned about what bystander intervention is. Shouldn't we all be doing something? But There's this thing called barriers. So why may people not intervene? What are the barriers that we experience? What stops us from getting involved? So if you're an educator, feel free to pause this replay and ask your class, what are some things that make it really hard to get involved in a scenario or a situation? So here are some barriers here. Maybe Victoria, you can go through the first two and then we can chat about that.
Yeah, for sure. So fear of retaliation or being targeted like themselves, thinking, oh, like if I do something, maybe they'll target me or maybe it'll make it worse. Fear of losing their social status or their partners or like their friends or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely some big ones there. Yeah, Melissa, do you want to go through the next three there?
For sure. I think a really big thing too, the fear of losing their social status is a really big thing, especially right now, during the pandemic. We all have our groups of friends and, we don't want to betray our friends by, sticking up for somebody else, or being the one that speaks up when there's a situation that's happening, but realizing that it's okay. And, if your friends don't understand that, that you're trying to do good and that's okay. And, your friend should accept you regardless of, what the situation is. So another really big barrier is they're not friends with the victim. So they, they're like, why should I help? But understanding that, that person is at risk of being harmed, and we have the skills inside us internally to be able to help them, and also externally to support us when we, help somebody in a situation that, can be very bothering to us. So another really big thing is a lack of knowledge about the individuals involved, the incident that took place, and whether they perceive someone to be in the right or wrong situation. If you're a person looking in, we sometimes don't always know what's going on, what happens behind closed doors, you know what I mean? And understanding and acknowledging the whole situation and understanding that. And also being able to have the knowledge like these webinars and having good supports in your life that help you to, build those skills inside you to be able to stick up for people when they're in harm's way. And sometimes we're in a rush, or we ourselves don't have enough emotional capacity to be able to deal with that. Maybe we're already overwhelmed. We're feeling really, overwhelmed or anxious, and we just aren't in the right mindset to be able to help somebody.
Mm-hmm. Or maybe we slept in and now our heads are going a mile a minute. Or maybe we didn't sleep enough and we're just too tired.
Maybe we have a test and we don't want to lose all that studying that we have in our heads, so we just kind of turn the other side to it.
Mm-hmm, definitely. Another one is the awareness about the specific situation that takes into account the people involved in the information about their ongoing actions, right? So like we may not necessarily know the individuals involved. We may not know what their history is, or maybe we don't want to get involved by making things worse, right? And so I have this one friend that when she speaks, she's super loud and exaggerated, and she happened to marry someone who also speaks super loud and really exaggerating. Maybe we're thinking of a friend that does this, but pretty much anyone within a 5-kilometer radius knows that these two are having a conversation because their hands are flailing and it's like they're yelling. And so for me, seeing them talk, that's just very normal. That's just who they are. But if Melissa was seeing two people aggressively having a very loud and arms flailing kind of conversation, Melissa may be like, oh my gosh, what is about to happen? Someone's going to get hurt, right? So sometimes we may not know. Sorry, Melissa, do you want to read the next one? Because I know you had some things to say.
Absolutely. So sometimes a barrier can be that they do not believe teachers or school staff will address the incident. This actually occurred to somebody in my personal life, where they had an incident occur, and there was nothing done on the staff side. So having staff be educated too on how to support someone during disclosing that they've been at harm, or they've watched somebody be at harm, or they've even stepped in to help somebody who's in harm. So just being able to support the students in like educating yourself and supporting them in any way that you can. And like the one after that as well is they believe the adults will make the bullying worse. Sometimes if we go to an adult, we're considered the rat, or stuff like that. So you don't want the person to get bullied even more because you've disclosed this information to an adult.
Yeah, Victoria, do you want to read the last one there?
Yes, they do not know how to intervene or address the bully, so you might not know what to do, like in the moment or in the situation, and you might not like want to make it worse or think you might make it worse by doing something like you're not sure of. So yeah, that could be a barrier.
Definitely. So, after talking about those barriers, what can we do to overcome those barriers? What can we do to be an upstander? And there's a lot of different approaches and techniques that we're going to go through that allows us to overcome some of those barriers. Definitely not all. We may not be able to fully be able to address a scenario and overcome all the barriers, but if there's at least a couple of the main ones that we can overcome, these approaches are definitely going to help with that. So upstander approaches, Victoria, did you want to go through the first two here?
Yeah, for sure. So recognizing something feels off, like a gut instinct, takes a friendly, calm approach, curious rather than accusing, when checking in, saying, hey, what's up, dude, all good, just to make sure that you're de-escalating the situation instead of escalating it. And when you're more curious about like how they are, so asking both of them, like, hey, are you okay? Or is everything good? It's way calmer, and they don't like get aggressive or anything like that.
Yeah, definitely. So we think about my two friends that are having a very loud and exaggerated conversation. If Melissa comes up to them and says, hey, I don't like what you're doing, and you're going to stop yelling at her, that is probably going to escalate a situation. It's probably going to lead to some of the barriers that we talked about, right? Like making the situation worse, or making the people involved then retaliate and start yelling at you. What do you mean? Who do you think you are getting involved in this situation? You don't know us. You don't know what we're talking about. And so you want to come at a situation more calm and curious, right? So it's not just about asking questions like, are you guys okay? It's also how you ask the question, right? So if you come into a situation, be like, hey, are you guys okay? That's going to elicit a very different response than, hey, you guys okay? Right? So you want to have that very calm demeanor in order to not escalate a situation and make things worse. Yeah, Melissa, do you want to go with the second one, the last two here?
For sure. So an upstander approach to being able to offer support that increases the options for people involved. So just being a friend for being there and being a friend for the victim, and also being able to, provide supports with, different strategies and stuff like that, to educate your friends as well, to be able to be an upstander, and staying safe and calling for help if the situation seems too risky. Sorry. So understanding, when you've done kind of all that you can do, or maybe you don't want to approach a situation because you're afraid for your own overall well-being. So being able to, get others involved when you feel like it's too much for you. And that's okay. It's okay to ask for support and ask for extra help, because, that's what the adults in your life are for, is to help you with that.
Definitely. Yeah. And that supportive approach about increasing the options, one of the things that we say is that we don't know what's going on in a situation, especially if we come across two people having a very loud, aggressive conversation, right? So we may not know who the victim and who the harmer, the abuser, perpetrator is. And so asking questions like, is everyone okay? Is going to offer an opportunity for people to either exit that conversation if they want, or to continue having that conversation. So you're offering options. So if Melissa were to come into my two friends talking and turn to the girl and say, hey, I know that you're being yelled at, and I'm going to call the cops, okay? And that way they're going to help you. That, and on the one hand, my friend may respond being like, hey, no, stop, like it's totally fine, like what are you doing? On the other hand, that person will probably still say stop and like, oh, don't worry, it's not a big deal. but maybe that harm turns from a more public place into a more private space, right? And so yelling at each other may move, especially if it's like between friends and that kind of immediate bullying, may move into an online space. So it's just really important that we're offering options for everyone involved. And, of course, those supports that Melissa was talking about just shortly thereafter. So we talked about how we get involved in a situation, but what can we actually do? So we're going to go over the 3 bystander techniques. The first one isn't really an approach, but you have to understand, you have to discover that something is happening in order to do something, right? And so a lot of that discovery is actually happening internally in our body. So maybe we feel butterflies in our stomach, or we feel our heart pound, or maybe we feel our brain freeze and we go, whoa, there's something going on here. I need to get involved, right? This is all the discovery process. And I would actually assert that like this is something that we do naturally. Victoria, do you want to go into the next one here?
Yeah, so being direct to intervene and address the scenario personally. So that could be like when we're thinking about like the superhero and how they directly like get involved and say, hey, you should stop that. But there can be some barriers to this, like if you might not be able to like handle the situation for whatever reason, or maybe it's best for someone else to do it, or you could be putting yourself in harm's way if you were to be direct.
Yeah, perfect. You hit the nail right on the head. Yeah, direct is us directly in getting involved, but that could also sound like a lot of barriers. So the second one here, Melissa, you can take it on.
All right. So being able to delegate when you see somebody being at risk of being harmed. So shifting the duty of intervention to somebody who is better able to deal with the situation. So, that can be, a teacher, a principal, a guidance counselor, but also kind of recognizing if you're not in a good space to be able to help that person, being able to, make sure that they receive the appropriate help that they need. In whatever situation that you're in.
Yeah. So, delegate is all about getting other folks involved. And sometimes those other folks could be your friends, right? So you saying, hey, is everyone okay here? May come off very differently if there's a group of your friends all saying, hey, is everyone okay here? Right? If you have 5 people asking you, is everyone all right? Like that's sending a very loud and clear message. So delegate is all about getting other folks involved, even if it's just a group of your friends. And as Melissa said, teachers, family members, parents, etc. The issue with delegate is that sometimes we may ask someone to get involved. So like a teacher or maybe Melissa, and I say, hey, Melissa, there's something going on at the end of the hallway. And Melissa goes, oh, yes, perfect. I'll get right there. Oh, sorry, hold on. My client's calling. 1 sec. And so Melissa then goes and deals with the client, whether that's through text or on the phone. And then by the time Melissa is finished with that conversation, either one, the situation's all done and de-escalated, or maybe Melissa forgets. I'm not saying Melissa's a forgetful person. I'm just saying that there's a possibility that this could happen with delegate, right? And that getting someone else involved they may not help, or maybe they will experience the boundaries as well, right? Or the barriers that we were talking about. So it's important with delegate to kind of keep track of if you're asking someone to get involved, to ask like, so what did you do? Like, what did you say? Is everyone okay? So
following up with them, and also but also kind of discussing this, like debriefing afterwards, kind of, following up with them. How did you make out with telling this person, what happened after I left, or stuff like that, being able to fully understand the situation, but also, understanding all parties that were involved.
Including yourself, right? And
For
having
sure.
a discussion afterwards.
Yeah, for sure. Doing a lot of reflection, how it made you feel, the emotions that you were feeling within your body. If you approached a situation another time, how could you deal with it a bit differently? I know in my personal life and my professional life, reflection is a really big part of my work. And that's kind of how I build those skills and build that resiliency to do better the next time. And reflection is great, whether it's journaling, drawing a picture, whatever you need to do, just being able to, take care of yourself, especially being an upstander, having that responsibility placed on us, it's really important to take care of ourselves.
Certainly. And the last one on here is distract. So distract is all about taking the focus from the immediate situation and putting it elsewhere. So one that I always like to use in the class is go, whoa, there's a turkey outside. Like there may not be a turkey outside, but at least the focus from whatever is happening in that space is being moved elsewhere. That works really great during Thanksgiving. That looks really great in the classroom, or even just walking outside, right? Like everyone wants to see a random bird flying around. That's pretty cool. So the thing with distract is that what's really good about it is that yes, it takes away from the immediate situation, but sometimes the person causing harm may not know that they've said something harmful, right? So you're with a group of friends, you're chilling at recess, and your friend says something inappropriate, whatever that may be. And then you go, hey, wait, did you guys do the math homework? So all of a sudden you've distracted, which is great. Now you're talking about this math homework that may or may not exist. But then you can have the opportunity after the conversation to ask your friend using a calm, curious approach, being like, hey, when you said this, what did you mean by that? Or I felt a little uncomfortable with you when you said this. Like, what are your thoughts around it? Yes, that's great. But then there's also times when that distract and checking in afterwards could be really hard, right? So if you're in line at McDonald's and someone says that same inappropriate comment and you go, whoa, did the price of chicken nuggets change, or is that just me? Like, did anyone else notice that? No? Okay. You may never ever see these people again, but at least you distracted. So you've got direct, delegate, and distract. So now we're going to watch a video, and during this video, kind of point out different intervention techniques that are being used. Are we directly getting involved? Are we delegating to other people, or are we distracting? Try to point those out for yourself during this clip.
70 to 90% of kids witness bullying regularly, whether in person or online.
What can you do if you see someone else being bullied? It might feel difficult or even impossible to intervene.
But you don't have to do something big or dramatic. Even one small action can help change the outcome.
You can choose not to participate. By refusing to join in or laugh along, you're sending a message that you don't agree with what they're doing.
You can talk to the kid they're bullying. It doesn't matter if the person is your close friend. Say that you think what happened was wrong. Ask if the person is okay and how you can help.
If you feel it's safe, you can speak up and tell the kids doing the bullying to stop.
You can also report the bullying. Find an adult you trust and ask for help.
When enough of us take small steps, they can add up to big changes. You have the power to help stop bullying.
Learn more at captaincompassion.org.
70.
Again, okay. Great. So now we're just going to go over a few scenario topics and ideas. Now, these topics, typically we actually go through these in class and talk about them as a class, which is something that we would definitely virtually love to do with you folks. But the best way to figure out, what type of interventions need a discussion is to ask the class, was there a time when something happened and you didn't know what to do or what to say? So you can do that anonymously and you can get everyone to write something down, and then you can have a discussion as a class. And so, we can think about the who, where, and what's, right? So how is intervention going to look different with our best friends versus our classmates? Or maybe what if it's a teacher doing something, or a parent, or maybe an extended family member? How are those interventions going to look different? What about if it's a romantic partner? What other kind of barriers are you going to experience there, or a doctor or a nurse? How about a coach, especially if it's a sport or a team that you really love to play and be on? What if it's a stranger or some random person on the internet? What about family, friends, or neighbors? How is that going to look different? What is a direct intervention? How is that going to look differently between a friend and family versus a stranger? What about where? How are these going to look different if it's during class versus recess? Or maybe in social media and online gaming? Victoria, maybe you can speak to that as the gaming expert here.
Yeah, for sure. So online games, it can be very hard. Like just recently, I was playing a game with friends, it's called Among Us. You probably know, it's really popular. And there was one guy who's known for saying like really mean things, and it got heated at some point because he wouldn't stop. So it was really hard because we were in Discord, so everyone was talking over each other, and I was kind of nervous. But with online, it's great to distract and just say, hey, like, let's just get back to it. Let's find the imposter, or let's get back to our tasks. And with that, I was able to actually talk to them privately, like in an own private chat. So that way it was, I was able to talk to them personally and say, hey, that's not okay without everyone like overlapping me. And so that's one of the ways where like distract could be really helpful with online games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And whether we know the person or not could really make a difference. What about if it's during practice, during a game, or maybe in the change room afterwards? How are your interventions going to look different in those different areas? What about holiday dinner, being with friends and family? How are the interventions going to look different? What about if it's in a doctor's office and something happens there? A friend's home or your home? Are you going to be more involved, or are you going to do a different approach? Or what about in the community? What about the what? Talking about what's actually happening and how those interventions are going to look different. So if someone is physically pushing or hitting someone, how is that intervention going to look different from that versus someone pantsing someone or maybe hitting someone's butt? What about verbal insults, yelling, jokes? How is that going to be different than someone's touching someone's genitals without consent? How are those interventions going to look different? What about if it's a hateful comment? Someone saying inappropriate things versus pressuring someone to do something, right? How are those interventions going to be different? What about sharing personal images? Or if we're part of a group and there's an inappropriate image that's shared, or maybe your friend your best friend posts an image of you two online that maybe you didn't want posted. How is that intervention going to look different there? What about if someone's just feeling uncomfortable? Are you going to delegate to someone else if someone tells you that they're not happy or that they're uncomfortable with something that's happened? Or are you going to get involved? What about body shaming and pointing out a body? How is that intervention going to look different if it's with classmates during recess versus with a coach during a game? How are those interventions going to look different? And so there's a lot of different ways that you can talk about this and how you can formulate these scenarios. Melissa, did you have anything that you wanted to add to this? Not sure if you're muted, but
You're good. You're good. That's good.
Okay, sorry. I didn't have
No worries.
Victoria, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
Oh yes, I just want to add for like online gaming too. It's important to know that you can still like block people. There are different methods for whatever you feel more comfortable with, or just leaving the game. Yeah.
Great. Okay, so to wrap things up here, Victoria, sorry, do you want to go through the first two there?
Yeah, for sure. So like bystander interventions can happen anywhere at any time. So it doesn't just have to be at school. It could be like social media, gaming, or just at home, or when you're hanging out with friends. But it is important to do something when there is something happening or you think it's not okay. And just making sure you're an upstander.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Melissa, do you want to go through the last two here?
Absolutely. So remembering our approaches. So having that calm approach, not coming in and being like, what's going on here? You know, being like, hey, is everybody okay here? Like just checking in to make sure you guys are doing okay. And being curious, you know, this is kind of one of those moments where being curious can actually have a really good benefit for us because we're checking in with everybody and just making sure everything's okay. And being supportive, like being a friend, providing, a listening ear to that person who was the victim of that certain situation. But also being able to provide support to the perpetrator as well, by providing them resources to, maybe they need somebody to talk to, and understanding that, sometimes all of us need a little bit of help. And sometimes we deal with situations in our life a little bit differently. And the techniques, the four 3Ds. So discovering that something is going on, and acknowledging that something doesn't sit right with us, being direct and kind of getting involved in the moment, de-escalating the situation and making sure that everyone's okay, and delegating whether we're able to, help out the whole situation or whether we need to get somebody else involved, and understanding what people are able to do that in the certain situations that we're at, and being able to distract, de-escalate the situation. I'm the type of person, I love to laugh. So when something's like a little uneasy, I like to make people laugh just to, and that can be a good distraction, some laughter to lighten up the situation. And, maybe that's all somebody really needed was, a good laugh or something, you know what I mean? So being able to do that as well.
Okay, great. Thank you everyone so much for joining us today. If you're an educator and have access to the survey, we appreciate any and all feedback that you're able to provide. In regards to our final shout out of resources, the Kawartha Sexual Assault Center has 3 24/7 crisis support lines. You do not have to be in crisis to access these supports. They can be a line of questions. What happens if, and who can I connect to when? So we are that line of support, and that we are here for you. Whether that's through text, our 24/7 crisis phone line, or even online. So you can head onto our website, kawarthasexualassaultcenter.com. There you can get connected to our web chat. There's someone always on there 24/7 who can also connect you to our services as well. Melissa, did you want to go through the youth group that's been just started?
Yeah, for sure. So the first one was last night. Shannon's been running it for a while, but this one's a little bit more of an itinerary going on. So Shannon's our youth and transition worker. She would be the best one to be able to serve the grade 7 and 8 population age categories. So she's got some really good stuff on traditional teachings, self-care, grandfather teachings, the traditional crafts, so beading, making shakers. So Shannon's information is on there, her name and her email and her phone number. And we also have phones that we're able to text with now. So if, texting's a bit more comfortable for you, you don't like making a phone call, we're able to support you in that way as well. So just feel free to reach out if you need support, letting your parents know that, you want to get some extra support, we're here for you.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. Thank you everyone so much for joining us today and having this conversation. Bystander Intervention is a really important tool, and it's something that you can utilize pretty much throughout your life. So thank you for joining. Thank you to Victoria and Melissa as well for your knowledge and expertise, especially in that digital world. Thank you.